Welcome back to the Root to Bloom podcast, where we explore the very fertile ground where creativity, culture, and social entrepreneurship that's conscious meet. Today, we are so honored to be joined by the one and only Rebecca Tesfagiorgis, who is a gifted painter, a radiant creative spirit, a recovering corporate girly, and a soon to be mom. Y'all, Rebecca brings not just her artistic brilliance, but also deep lived, embodied experience and wisdom on what it means to step out of creative repression and into radical creative freedom. Her journey is one that's about reclaiming her voice, trusting her intuition, and letting beauty bloom, even in perhaps what could be unlikely soil. So, we are so grateful to have you with us today, Rebecca. Thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy to be joining. What a beautiful intro. Thank you, Ray.
You are so welcome. So, before we dive in, could you just share a little bit about who you are and what lights you up in the world, both creatively and personally?
Sure. How do I top that intro? Well, like you said, I am a recovering corporate girly, so I spent a lot of time in that world in marketing and technology. And since then, I've really kind of just been diving into my creativity and taking that very seriously. Like you said, I'm a writer. I think I'm a writer first above all things, but I also love visual arts. I love to draw. I love to paint. And yeah, what really lights me up creatively, personally speaking, I would say all arts. Like I am just totally indiscriminate. I love music. I love writing. I love painting, dancing. I love it all. Musicals probably light me up the most. I'm a real like musical dork that way, just like a musical theater kid that was never actually in musical theater, but I love that. And creatively speaking, like in terms of what I love to explore, I really like going deep. So I'm all about the spirituality, deeper layers of life. What does it really mean? And just kind of studying like the unseen forces that guide us, that compel us, things like that. But even just in visual arts, kind of studying composition and what was this artist trying to say, or even if they weren't trying to, what is coming out, things like that. So I really like the kind of beneath the surface, the invisible, that kind of stuff that lights me up. I really like exploring that. Yeah, and um, personally, I love people, I love animals, I love nature. Yeah, I'd say that's it.
I love that. That's so beautiful, that depth, depth of the human experience in the natural world, maybe even in the spiritual world, are the things that really ground you. And it sounds like even nature really is something that grounds you and guides you, inspires you. So I'm inspired even just hearing that. I really love your multimodal approach to creativity. I love that you use the word indiscriminate. I mean, it sounds like, and I kind of feel similarly, different mediums are essentially different methodologies, and whatever feels right for the message I want to communicate is what we do. And it sounds like that's very much similar to you. You love all of the mediums, all of the methodologies and ways of self-expression. So I think that that's so, so beautiful. And kind of relatedly, I was wondering, could you just walk us through what's your creative journey been like so far? Maybe even taking us back to, when you felt creatively repressed, and then bringing us forward to the now of what it looks like for you in this moment and what you've been up to lately creatively.
Sure. Yeah. Um, so my creative journey honestly has been one where it's been full of blocks. I've been full of blocks. It's been very stifled, very repressed, and truly like a closeted creative in the absolute truest sense. So I kind of did my 9 to 5 thing, and then, 6 to 9, I would kind of privately tinker very, um, you know, cautiously work on something that I was working on, whether it be a piece, a writing piece, or a project that I'd kind of come up with. But it was very much kind of like my own little personal secret. And so I did it almost in isolation, almost like shamefully, which is so weird to think back on now and say that, but that really is, it was just so much fear around sharing it, around even claiming it and claiming like this is something I like to do. And I felt at the time like, I couldn't answer the question, but what are you doing it for? Like, are you making money from it? That was kind of my yardstick for is it worthwhile and is it a worthy endeavor if you make money from it. That's the way that is such a capitalist way to think. But that was the world I was in. And so that's kind of my creative journey, was just in the closet doing stuff, not really finishing much, just kind of fumbling around in there, if you will, metaphorically speaking. And I had, good jobs, making good money, but I did feel really kind of lost and like, what is this all for? And yeah, that came to a head at some point where I think it was around really the pandemic, for sure. Around even before the pandemic, I had started doing things. I'd met my partner. He's a musician, and I sang with him on a couple of his albums. I wrote songs, and he really pushed me to do that. That was not easy. But once I got a taste, it was like I couldn't unsee the void that I had already intuited was inside me, but now it was just like, oh man, this void is very big, and I feel like really I'm not nurturing my soul and my creativity and my spirit, really. So, yeah, things came to a head and I was in that corporate space. I took some time off, mental health leave, and it was kind of a distressing time. It was also in the midst of the pandemic as well. So I wasn't alone, but it was a lot. And yeah, that's where I started kind of getting some space from the life that I created and looking at it kind of like, whose life is this? Who did this? Who created this life? Because it didn't look like me. It didn't reflect me. I didn't really recognize it. It was just, it felt like not of my making. So did a lot of healing work, a lot of trauma work, a lot of therapy, a lot of that kind of thing. And then I just started kind of slowly finding my way back home, as maybe cheesy as that sounds. Um, and started just finding my way back to, it was a lot of shedding what actually this is not who I am, or this is not what I want to do. And just starting to be a little bit more honest day by day about what I want to do, how I want to live, how I want to present and show up in the world. And just backing off the whole like just gritting my teeth and bearing it and pushing through and being productive and that sort of thing. And just focusing on being just honest and more like spirit centric. Like, what is my spirit calling me to do? What do I feel like doing? And it's okay to do what I feel like doing. Like that doesn't have to be wrong. And I think before I was kind of in this space where if I felt like doing something, I needed to justify it and make a whole business case for why my feeling or my wanting to do something was okay or right. And yeah, I started slowly getting out of that. And now I'm working with Root to Bloom, great consultancy collective. And besides that, I started taking a bunch of art classes and just started finding my way creatively speaking. So yeah.
Man, what a journey. What a journey. And it's interesting. A couple things you said that really stuck with me, which is like, yeah, coming from being a recovering corporate girly, which I am too. So we have that bond together. But yeah, when you are used to being in such a hyper capitalistic and commercialized world, and then you bring art to that, like that can impact your practice. And I wanted to double click on, do you feel like that impacted the kind of work that you created, not just the way you thought about it, but your actual creative process and output?
That's such a good question. That's such a good question. Sometimes, I guess, yeah, that's my answer. Sometimes it did. Sometimes when I was too in my head about it, my art would be, you know, almost like forced a little bit. Like I'm just really trying to do a thing here, but it wasn't engaging my spirit. So it was hard for me to maintain momentum. Sometimes it just felt like I was just trying to force a thing. Whereas when I was a lot more free about it and I really kind of let myself accept a download that I received, like, "Ooh, that'd be interesting," or follow a curiosity, something like that. Then I could get into, work periods where I would just flow for hours and kind of lose track of time, and it felt more honest and it was less outcome focused. Whereas when I was thinking with that kind of corporate hat on, I was really kind of obsessed with like the outcome. And it just took the fun out of it. Honestly, just it's like it's not even fun anymore. And now it's feeling suddenly it just raised the stakes and it made it so much bigger than it needed to be. And then that makes it feel less approachable. And so, having creative blocks also meant I had to learn how to like sit with the resistance. Because as I would sit down to do something, I'd often like get triggered just by the act of doing it. The act of doing it I would get flooded with these negative thoughts or ideas and this intense like panic, really, and anxiety. So I it did affect the like what I was choosing to do. But I got a lot of feedback just in my body, like that sort of that feedback, the feelings that I got, or the resistance to it, or not finishing it, not wanting to work on it. Like that was important feedback. And the more I started to trust that, that doesn't mean I'm lazy. That doesn't mean I'm being unproductive or procrastinator. Like it might mean that this is not the thing that I need to pursue at this moment and I'm being too focused on an outcome instead of kind of being present with what it is that's actually calling me to it, if that answers the question.
No, it absolutely does. And yeah, I just my mind just remembered this book I think I had recommended to you. Do you remember it? Was it called The Resistance of Art? Was it called? Do you remember the name of the book?
It's by Stephen.
Steve Pressfield.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the book, but yeah, that's who wrote it. And it's so good. It's such a good book, right? Such a good recommendation.
Yeah, oh, it's called The War of Art. It's called The War of Art. And yeah, a lot of the things you are speaking to, I feel like that book kind of brings up like that resistance. And it sounds like you overcame that a lot with a few things. I'm hearing play, inviting play into your practice and being okay with play. I'm hearing like your own bodily feedback and listening to your own, yeah, embodied intuition, which I think, yeah, it can be easy to turn off and ignore, but it sounds like it was important data for you. And then I'm hearing you say like part of the moment where you were like, this is it. I have to make space for my creativity in my life. Were certain moments in people, moments like the pandemic and people like your partner that came into your life and reflected back yeah, some of those musings to you or maybe some questions or curiosities. So that's really, really beautiful that you've made space to receive these downloads and to really just act on them. I really, really admire that.
Oh, thanks, Ray. Yeah, everything you said, I agree with. It, you know, it didn't feel like it at the moment, but everything was building up and working towards those opportunities of even meeting my partner and having him be someone that was so just even interested in helping me come out of my shell and come out of the creative closet, if you were, or meeting certain people at certain crossroads and things like that. Like more and more I see like nothing that you do is for nothing. Even the work that I kind of did in isolation, in the dark, fumbling around in the this creative closet, metaphorically speaking, it all still counts. And it all, some of the stuff that I did back then, I look back at and I'm building on today because it still came from somewhere and it still generated this energy of like of creativity. It still was created. It still has my spirit in it, even if I wasn't ready to share it, or even if I maybe didn't value it as much back then, and I wasn't so secure about wanting to take on creativity, those sorts of things. But yeah, it all kind of it all counts. And so like that journey, that creative journey, even the stuff that isn't explicitly creative, it is part of, like I'm a creation. We are all creation. So everything on our journey is part of our, creative journey, because it creates and it adds to the complexity of like who we are and what we do and how we think and even the corporate stuff, like I've learned so much from the corporate world that, I'm not in it anymore and I'm really grateful for that. But I took away a lot, that, is kind of I often say like that's where I grew up. I did a lot of growing up there and I did. So yeah, it all just kind of counts and it all counts even in and on the creative journey as well. That's what I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, last night, no, it was 2 nights ago, I was talking about this with a friend at Bible study that like there's this concept that nothing is wasted, like nothing in your life, like no hard experience. It somehow all comes together. It somehow all comes together, even our grief journeys, even our hard corporate journeys, like even all the fumbling in the dark, like everything that feels like it's painful or confusing, like it really does all work together. But the thing is, hindsight is 2020, like we don't often know that in the moment. And so it sounds like in hindsight, you're really seeing how some of the difficult things of when you were really trapped by creative blocks and things like that, how those have really come together for your good and had a positive shift and impact in your life. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything you want to add in terms of, how embracing creative freedom, um, and all things considered, those things that nothing is wasted, those things that weren't wasted, like how to kind of both of those impact maybe, your work as a consultant at Root to Bloom. I'm really curious about that. Um, Even your sense of self. I don't know if you feel like you've experienced a change or a shift in your own self-concept, as you've had to come out of something that's really tricky and difficult and into something that is a bit more liberation based. So if there was anything there you wanted to lift up, would love to hear.
That's really good. Good question. Good questions overall. Um, yeah, I think like when you talk about nothing is wasted, looking back now, I also see that, you know, even though I call them creative blocks, there's a part of me that feels like, well, I was creating in the dark, but I was creating. So I wasn't necessarily blocked. It was my feelings around the process of creating and what I was creating. That was maybe distorted. And that was maybe rooted in fear and I didn't have the confidence to share and that sort of thing. But if we're just talking about the ability to like put something to paper, I was doing that. So I guess, yeah, back to like nothing is wasted. Even what you do in the dark, part of I think it's yes, it's not wasted, but also you might know more than you think you know. You might be doing more than you think you're doing. And that's partly why it counts. And if you just do something, it's 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 like it's worthwhile and you can learn as you go and you can sharpen and you don't have to know what you're doing to get started, to just put pen to paper, to put the paintbrush on the canvas. You don't have to know. And in fact, the less you know, the more you learn. So even with the consultancy, I started in this world pretty fresh. Like I came from super corporate, money and tech and things like that. So I didn't know much about this space whatsoever. But just kind of being thrust into it and just starting, you land eventually. You find somehow, it's kind of like um then just fall back and the net will catch you or whatever the saying is. But yeah, it really is true that kind of taking that first step, even a little step, even one that feels as though I'm kind of I'm moving blind here a little bit, there is, I think, cosmic forces that come to your side and that rally to just meet you there or give you a little bit of something here, something there that kind of helps you along the way. So even in kind of the darkness, fumbling around, if you don't know what you're doing, if you've never done it, it's okay because again, in the corporate world, there's so much stock put into being an expert and oh, I've done this for 15 years, I've done that for 10 years, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also, I think it's okay to not have ever done it and to just start and to try. And yeah, you gain a lot of wisdom with time, but you also have perspective. When you don't have time, you are able to bring in perspective. You're also able to learn something, and it's fertile ground for both you and the work that you're doing, that you get to meet it in a unique place and in a unique way with a unique lens. And there's something to be said about that, I think.
I think there's also something to be said about that indeed. And the quote that just came to my head so strongly when you were talking about, maybe you don't know where to start, and maybe that's okay. There's this quote that really guides my life is like, leap and the net will appear. Just leap. Like so much of it is just courage. It sounds like you just had the courage to just try, to just leap, to just knock. That's another metaphor. Just knock on the door. That's our responsibility. It's just to knock and just to try. And you never know where that might lead you. And it's led you to some really incredible places. We love working with Rebecca at Root to Bloom, not only on the fundraising strategy side, but also Rebecca's an incredible communications consultant. We love working and supporting our clients with their comm strategies and all of those needs, which are a bit more on the creative side. So nothing is wasted, and your corporate side helps with that indeed. So I'm just really loving, enjoying hearing about how all that's really manifested for you. um I don't know if there are any particular big challenges that you wanted to lift up, that came along the way, that something that you really had to navigate and you really had to figure out how to grow from. Um, just to lift up, I know, and I'm not sure if I said this already, but you did write a very beautiful um article last year in Complete Radical Honesty about kind of the challenges of being a creative that felt trapped. So, if there's anything that you really want to punctuate, just so folks can be inspired by how you really grew through a few very specific, difficult moments. Yeah, I invite you to share if there's anything alive for you.
Thank you, Ray. Um, Yeah, there are a lot of challenges. Like to be clear, I am not like I'm healed. It's amazing. I still struggle with a lot of these um the creative resistance, which by the way, in that book that you mentioned, he talks about it's kind of a persistent thing that doesn't really go away. I mean, we hear about it in like writer's block, things like that. Like it just keeps happening and it's kind of like you have to overcome it bit by bit. But I will say, as an immigrant, um, an African immigrant, it was particularly hard, and it is particularly hard to sometimes navigate creativity and get past the like all of the stuff I heard about what it means to be an artist growing up. My parents' biggest concern was about me being like homeless, penniless because I wanted to do art. That was their big thing. So, and then, I got into the corporate world, and so they don't totally disagree in that world. So often the sentiment there is similar. And so I was surrounded with this idea that if I ever wanted to do art, I was going to give up being able to survive. It was kind of like it's either you do art and eventually you live in horrible conditions if you have any money at all, or you survive. It was kind of like it was anti-survival. And and I know that that's not true, but it's something that it is actually so deep rooted in my body. That was, partly why when I would sit to do something creative, I would really get triggered and I would have this identity crisis kind of come up in the midst of just wanting to create something, and the stakes felt very high. So letting go of that, letting go of some of those thoughts, challenging them, and and sometimes just calming myself down it's not that big. It's just a painting. It's just a blog post. It's just a whatever it is, whatever the talk track has to be, or reaching out to a friend, that sort of thing. But yeah, that was probably one of the biggest challenges is, depending how you grew up or what you had heard, those things can really have like a stickiness to them. Those ideas of what it means to be an artist, where it will take you, the sort of outcome it will provide or create in your life. Those things, it creates sort of this like identity. It created an identity crisis in me, and letting go of that and just not trying to control outcomes and just having a sense of like, well, what other people have decided it means to be an artist is not something that I have to live according to. But it was one of the biggest challenges, and it gets easier for sure. It's not necessarily one of the challenges, the biggest ones that I have now, but it was kind of this old conditioning that I had that I was really tethered to that can come up a lot. So not everyone lives this lifestyle. And that can be really unnerving because I had spent so much time in the corporate world. So a lot of my community is also still there, and they're my best friends in some cases, a lot of my family members. So they look at my life and the fact that I even call myself an artist, they think I'm absolutely insane. And just finding the wherewithal to bear with that and not take it personally and not let it be a reflection of you, but let that be, well, that's theirs and that's okay. And I'm, not going to be offended by it or rattled by it. Or mostly what I used to be was I would then question myself, like, oh my God, am I doing the wrong thing? Should I even be doing this? Maybe I am crazy to be doing this stuff. And, that sort of thing, I really kind of let it guide or create self-doubt. And now I kind of see like, well, it's okay. It is okay for all of us to be different. It's okay for, we're all built differently, and what someone else can or cannot tolerate is different from what I can or cannot tolerate or want or desire or want to create. So the creative practice itself of creating art, creating works of art, and meeting with other people within this community, other artists, going to the school that I've gone to for over a year now, and meeting them, that really helped me just break out of the a narrow vision of like, this is how the world should be, and this is what you should be doing with your life, and this is how you make money. And then yeah, meeting people in a more like artistic and creative community, including the Root to Bloom. It's like there's so many ways to live life. There's so many ways to create your life and to thrive. And it doesn't, we have more options than, you know, survive, or I don't know, be an artist and die. Like, what madness to think that those are the only two options. But with the sort of kind of deep conditioning that I had, that is kind of what I thought. And it makes sense, I immigrated here with my family when I was young, and we came as refugees, and we came in a very desperate situation. And a lot of immigrants that come to the West are in a kind of desperate mindset. And it takes a while to get out of that. And for my parents, um, you know, they didn't enjoy the freedoms that I get to enjoy growing up, that I got to enjoy growing up. So I can actually understand their perspective as well. But I don't have to carry it with me anymore. So yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, I just thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's so real, and I would imagine that hits home with a lot of our listeners. Um, being an immigrant, that's a whole nother level of like be an artist or don't be an artist. I'd also love to extend that and say, I think for racialized folks, kind of more in general, I mean, even racialized folks in North America that have been there for 400 years, it is still a sensitive thing. And so I just appreciate you naming that, and how you've had to really, at some points make sacrifices or adjustments just to make it work and to honor the calling within you. I was curious what routines, habits, rituals, practices have you put into place to make living a truly creativity led life viable? I will say, I know one of the things you've been attending this art school, that's been a really big thing. I know you mentioned you have a writing practice. I don't know if that somehow, kind of contributes into that. I just kind of wanted to get a sense of what you could share, maybe to inspire our listeners for ideas.
Ooh, okay, yeah. So I do journal pretty religiously. I'm a devoted journaler. I do it every morning. And it started with the book that I would highly recommend called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. And it's all about creative blocks. And it's like one of the things that she really recommends and kind of it's part of the program, insists that you do is you wake up and you just kind of you get everything in your head out onto a page and you don't look back at these journal posts or these journal entries rather, you just write them and it just gets like the noise, I would say, out of your head first thing in the morning. And you it's just free write. So you're just free writing, maybe 4 pages, maybe 3 pages, maybe less, whatever you can manage. I mean, sometimes I would free write an email to myself when I didn't have time in the mornings, and that would, while I was commuting, and that would be that because that was just my morning journal. But I do that, and I do think if it helps to just like I said, just get like thoughts energetically kind of out of the way before even starting the day. Um, and besides that, when I am working on something, whether it's a painting, whether I'm writing something, if I'm in flow, that's great. I'll just kind of keep going. But I definitely find that, having a tight amount of time, whether it's like the 25 minutes on a timer, which I think is the Pomodoro method, or having like I'll listen to one side of a record and I'll be like, okay, that's enough. Now I need a break. Taking those breaks is really important and for me those breaks are really about moving my body. So I am a very like emotional person and I think a lot of artists are. I have a lot of emotion plus I like to kind of go deep. I really like to go there. So in order to counterbalance that, I need just like frivolous, lighthearted, just a walk just to like get out, let's be in the sun. I'll just walk my dog. I'll, hang out and read a book, that sort of thing. So just there's a lot of energy being, I think, generated when I create art and exerted. And so kind of doing things, whether it's in nature or even watching something inspiring to kind of fill my cup is important so that I can then, pour out as I create. But yeah, moving my body and just kind of getting that energy out, dissipating it. It helps with I'm big on like the nervous system. How am I breathing? How am I regulating? Because sometimes working on art can create things in me that I'm not expecting. And so just managing if it's feeling like, okay, I'm feeling a lot of tension, how can I go and like release that now? Or if I'm feeling quite, calm and it's going great, that's great. But maybe I'll do a workout. So just trying to balance that so that my nervous system is just in balance and regulated pretty much.
Oh my goodness. Those are also good. Those are also good. I also I think we read the same things. Um Also a big believer in The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and I just had to even pull it off my bookshelf when you said it because there are three affirmations I wanted to just share with our listeners that I thought were really powerful, and I wonder if they're also part of your grounding practice. But one of them is creativity is the creator's will for me. Another is my creativity heals myself and others. And another one is I am willing to be of service through my creativity. And would highly recommend y'all have a look at that book. But it sounds like that book was important. It sounds like daily journaling is another part of Rebecca's practice, which is incredibly grounding. The Pomodoro method. Um, Really interesting. You spend a bit of time on embodied practice. So whether that's movement to dissipate energy, whether that's just having, doing that with the walk with your dog, nervous system regulation and tending to that, which is incredibly important. And also communities of practice, being in these creative communities that seem like they've been so nurturing for you. So thank you. Look, as we wrap, I just wanted to ask if you could look 5 years into the future, what would your hope for your creative life be? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like?
I love that. What a juicy question. 5 years from now, first of all, I love those quotes. Like, oh, I was like, amen, amen, amen. I love those quotes that you read. They're so good. So, 5 years from now, I would really love to embody those quotes, just continue to embody those quotes and really like I do see creativity and this practice of creativity is my spiritual practice. It is my prayer. It is the way that I receive guidance. It's like it is my communion with the divine, with God, whatever you want to call that. This is the most active way that I can connect to something beyond me, but that is very much a part of me. And it literally works through my body, which is why I'm big on the nervous system cues, because I think that's like getting a download and then doing something with it and building on it. And then kind of you have this like convening with this spiritual force. Like, what should I do next? What should I, it's a series of changes that you make when you're working on something creative and artistic that's all happening within you, but it's also this like I don't know, unseen conversation that you're having. So 5 years from now, I just want to grow in that way. I want to evolve spiritually, creatively, and I want to kind of step more out of the closet because I've been, I'm out of the closet, but I'm still pretty quiet. So I would love in 5 years from now to be a little bit more open, sharing, things like that, just really connecting with people and communities through my art, through their art, and just being a little bit more socialized in this space and with my creativity, not just as my own kind of creative spiritual practice, but using it as a way of connecting, not just, you know, creating still in isolation, but really connecting more, creating community, that sort of thing.
I love that so much. I love that so much. I mean, I think we have like a real similar mindset about creativity, what it is and where it comes from. I mean, for me, I'm a vessel and a channel for God's creativity and the work. The work just comes through me, but I don't pretend to believe inspiration uh comes from somewhere that's not spiritual. Um, and yeah, even the etymology of inspiration, like I got into that and I was like, wow, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So I hear you with that, and I love that there's a divinity to it. There's a divinity to it, and it's you call it downloads. It's also communication, absolutely. And yeah, I love that you have incorporated this ideology into your practice and that it got you. And, we just want to first of all say, Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing your whole heart with us, your wisdom, your experience, your lessons, your highlights, your lowlights, and your creative fire with us today. It's really been such a pleasure to speak with you, Rebecca. Please let us know, where can folks find you? Where can they follow your journey and stay connected to your art?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at Rebecca underscore TES. So Tess. Um, for now. And so hopefully that'll be evolving and growing and changing. But yeah, for now I'm on Instagram, Rebecca underscore Tess. And thank you so much, Ray. This was so fun.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Guys, go ahead and give her a follow. And to all of our listeners, look, if this conversation spoke to you, we invite you to stay connected, to stay rooted with us at Root to Bloom. You can find us and this podcast at www.roottobloom.org, or follow along on our Instagram at We Are Root to Bloom. Until next time, keep tending to your own creative blooming. We'll see you soon.